are we? Welcome to episode 6 in my series of videos on zonal marketing, a brand new model which uses the tactical lessons taken from football management to help you understand, plan and measure your marketing activity effectively. I'm Simon Vincent, the marketing tactician, and in this episode, the second in a two-part series, I'm talking through how the way that you approach your marketing can be changed to get more out of it. In many cases, this will essentially be a discussion about content. But the reason I use the word approach is because there are certain decisions made by some companies that are about how the business presents itself, but not what we might traditionally associate with the word content. So in the last episode, I touched upon how content or approach could take the form of attention retainers and attention regainers, essentially filling the awareness and consideration parts of the traditional marketing funnel. But how do we create content and or approaches that satisfy the job of driving a purchase decision and or facilitating a purchase decision, and then making sure that those customers turn into loyal brand advocates? This is where we turn to the other fundamental of zonal marketing, the concept of space. A reminder that space in zonal marketing relates to how transactional or tribal we are in our messaging. How are we going to push our customers towards a sale or pull them towards the brand with non-salesy content? Accordingly, we have space constricting and space creating content. And a reminder that just for the moment, we're just talking about the 4 different types of roles, including possession retainers and possession regainers, as they apply primarily to defenders, audience channels, to midfielders, broadcast channels, and strikers, conversion channels. We're not going to look at goalkeepers, data channels, though I will touch upon goalkeepers and data channels towards the end of the video. In football, certain players in all areas of the pitch are considered to be extremely attacking in their approach. In defence, this tends to be in the form of attacking fullbacks such as Alphonso Davies or Trent Alexander-Arnold. In years gone by, you'd be talking about Roberto Carlos or Dani Alves, for example. In midfield, we're typically talking about players who play like a number 10 role, such as Eden Hazard or Thomas Muller, or previous to them, you'd be Zinedine Zidane, Diego Maradona. In attack, we're talking about players who play on the shoulder of the last defender, such as Michael Owen in years gone by, or those who chase down opposition defenders, such as Jamie Vardy. In every case, the common thread is that these players all love to constrict space, so they play high up the field. They impose themselves upon the opposition, and as a result, of course, they are heavily involved in the goal-scoring activity. In zonal marketing, our equivalent is salesy content. So such content is typically extremely focused on the product rather than the lifestyle, as discussed with possession retaining content, or the brand, as we saw in possession regaining content. The 2 golden rules here are that space constricting content should remove friction and induce action. By friction, I mean any subjectivity. Anything that might cause me to make a subjective call on the content will create friction and potentially stop me from buying. So, as an example, if you're trying to sell me a t-shirt, but you photograph that t-shirt on a much younger female, clearly based in a part of the world that I don't live in or in an environment that I don't tend to go to often, like a nightclub, you've immediately put several barriers, a huge amount of friction in the way of me buying that product. I might decide that the t-shirt is only for girls, even if it isn't. I might decide it's only for young people, even if it isn't. I might decide it's only for people who live in hot countries, even if it isn't. You get the gist. Even more than that, I might be put off buying the t-shirt simply because I don't like the look of the girl or the environment that she's in. In short, you've given me plenty of good reasons not to buy the t-shirt, none of which are related to the actual quality or design of the t-shirt, which I actually might like despite all of that. The lesson: when you're trying to sell, keep the image plain on a white background and with nothing subjective around it. The same applies to language. Keep it simple, facts-based. Tell me what I need to know. Price, colours, sizes, whatever. Apple's website does this brilliantly. A website is, after all, a conversion point for most businesses, especially for Apple. And so whenever you go to the Apple website, what do you see? iPhones, iPads, Macs, all on plain backgrounds with simple, specific product points highlighted in the text. Inducing action means giving me clear, obvious calls to action. It is, in its simplest form, this means not overcomplicating a button text. Buy now, while a little prosaic, is far more effective than click here to discover your new favorite hobby. Likewise, I see websites all the time that have changed menu items like contact and about to artsy synonyms such as reach out or Dave's story. This is a mistake. Often your web visitors are simply looking for quick answers to one thing. If it isn't super clear where they can find that, they'll bounce. Want to take your space constricting, action inducing copy to the next level? Well, build in scarcity. Scarcity of time, stock, opportunity, whatever, and sprinkle in a little bit of social proof just to amp up the FOMO. One of my favorite examples of this is cited in the book Yes, 50 Secrets from the Science of Persuasion by Dr. Noah Goldstein, Steve Martin and Robert Cialdini. They explain how copywriter Colleen Zott shattered a near 20-year sales record for a home shopping channel by simply changing 3 words in a call to action. Now, according to the authors, Zott changed the line, operators are waiting, please call now, to if operators are busy, please call again. Zott's tiny change in copy created the illusion of scarcity, putting pressure on the consumer to buy now, and also of social proof. Others are buying this, so I should. In so doing, employing the 2 most powerful drivers in space-constricting, conversion-focused marketing. Brands that routinely use a space-constricting approach in their comms include luxury brands, but also savvy small brands who use the fact that their resources are limited but in high demand to sell quickly and often ramping up their costs in the process. For yet more recommendation in terms of reading on space-constricting marketing, take a look at Oversubscribed by Daniel Priestley. In football, there are players whose actions create space on the pitch. Now, I want to be very specific here because we talked about the creation of space when we looked at width in episode 4, but there is a difference between a football player creating space by simply being positioned on the edges of a pitch and a player who creates space through his movements or actions. Andrea Pirlo, for example, when he played for Juventus, played in this kind of 3-5-2 formation, and he created space through playing his sort of trademark long quarter style back passes to the wings, even though he was actually positioned right bang centre in the middle of the midfield. Similarly, Lionel Messi, when he was playing at Barcelona under Pep Guardiola, plays in this sort of 4-3-3 formation, and he practically invents the modern false 9 position when he was asked to play deep against Real Madrid in a match that Barcelona won 6-2, despite being the designated striker and playing through the middle. Such approaches in football do 2 things. They give the impression of carrying less attacking intent. Think about Messi playing deep, for example. And they also up the risk-reward factor. So think of those long raking passes from Pirlo, which can simultaneously progress his team high up the field very quickly, but also run a high risk of being intercepted if Andrea Pirlo isn't Andrea Pirlo. In marketing, our equivalent is content that is mission-focused. So we've talked about product-focused content being space-constricting, lifestyle-focused content being possession-retaining, brand-focused content being possession-regaining, and with space-creating content, we shift the focus entirely away from the company altogether and onto a greater cause or belief. Simon Sinek fans amongst you will recognise this. This is what he refers to as the company's why, and it is the driving force behind campaigns such as Nike's Dream Crazy, featuring Colin Kaepernick, or Always Is Like a Girl. These campaigns famously didn't actually mention the products their companies sold at all, i.e. they were about as far from being salesy as it is possible to be. But they were also risky. They identified the Nike and Always brands as standing for something far greater than the company, the Black Lives Matter movement and the devastating effects of gender stereotyping, respectively. And when you do that, it will divide opinion. Famously, Nike's campaign saw customers burning their shoes on social media and calling for a boycott of the company. It also, by the way, saw them gain $43 million of cash value of media exposure in less than 24 hours and achieved a 31% growth in online sales within a week compared to 17% gain for the same period in 2017. So, swings and roundabouts there. Seth Godin, widely considered to be the godfather of modern marketing, is fond of using the phrase, "it's not for you." It's his rallying cry for brands to differentiate and do important marketing by aligning themselves with tribes, groups of people who have certain beliefs, certain missions, if you will. So, how do we create space in our content if we haven't got access to NFL superstars or Procter & Gamble's ad budget? The answer is we use in-jokes or references, phrases or language that only our tribe will understand. Messages we know will resonate with them far beyond their interactions with our company. Similarly, we use semiotics, symbols or images that a specific type of person will get, but that will alienate others. A great example of this is Apple's 1984 Super Bowl ad. Big ideas, little details is the phrase that I like to use. Talk about issues that exist in the wider world, but through the lens of a single person's story or a specific aspect of that issue. For good reading on this, I'd give Anything by Seth Godin a go, but a good starting point is This Is Marketing, and of course Simon Sinek's Start With Why is also a seminal text here. I mentioned at the top that the four roles of space creators, space constrictors, possession retainers, possession regainers applied to the outfield players. Goalkeepers and their zonal marketing equivalent, data channels, are a little more limited in terms of how they fit in. They don't do quite as much as the outfield players or channels that we've talked about so far. Essentially, both data channels and goalkeepers are split into reactive and proactive roles. In football, think of them as being a shot-stopping goalkeeper, reactive, or a sweeper keeper, proactive. One is quite literally a last line of defence, preventing the team from conceding goals, while the other, if effective, can actually be involved in the outfield play and proactively start attacks. The same is true with data channels. In their simplest form, they're reactive, compiling data from the company's marketing activities and identifying where things went right or wrong over any given period. However, the truly effective data channels are proactive. They actively seek trends, data, and information from the surrounding world and feed it into the company's marketing efforts to help them to perform better. For more on this, I'm currently reading Data-Driven Marketing by Mark Jeffrey, a book that Amazon founder Jeff Bezos apparently makes all of his exec team have on their compulsory reading list. So, it's got a bit of kudos to it. In previous episodes, I've illustrated certain zonal marketing ideas by drawing lines on the tactics board and positioning the counters accordingly. I find that having the visual aid of a tactics board helps me personally to understand what I'm doing with my marketing, and so it seems fair to ask how we show the content roles of space creators, possession regainers, etc. on the board too. Let's say, for example, that we've established that social media marketing is going to be a broadcast channel. We've identified that we want this to reach a niche audience. And let's say we want to use the channel to keep our target customers' attention, so we're going to primarily use lifestyle, i.e. possession retaining content on there. How do we show that within the box? Well, the truth is that I've tried a few different methods, including creating 4 subdivisions within each box, but that does end up making things a little bit complicated. I also tried the American football style X, Y, and Z connotations, but they weren't ideal either. What I've personally settled on is using spatial approximations. I move the counters higher and lower in the box to denote their role. With this, my rule is that space constrictors are placed high in the box. Possession retainers are placed next in terms of height. Possession regainers slightly further down, and then space creators are lowest in the box. Finally, it is of course possible for a single player to fulfill a number of different roles for a team. The archetypal box-to-box midfielder, for example, is able to do a bit of everything depending on what the situation calls for. So likewise, in marketing, some channels are able to regain a target customer's attention and then move them further towards the goal without shifting the customer to another marketing channel. Is the equivalent of passing. In this case, zonal marketing considers this the equivalent of carrying the ball forward, Franz Beckenbauer style, and it's depicted by simply using an arrow to show progressive movement. So you stick it where you think it's mainly based and then use an arrow to show progressive or regressive movement. Okay, I think that's enough for now. Check back here for a new video every week, each one explaining another part of the marketing process through a footballing lens. If you're enjoying what you're watching, please do like and comment, and while you're at it, why not tell your mates to tell their mates? After all, we all have a duty to share these things we know so that we may improve the lives of others. I am available for speaking gigs, training sessions, client work. If you'd like to talk to me about any of that, you can do so by visiting x-cmo.com. In the next session, I'll be bringing together a real life example of zonal marketing in action. I'll be using the example of a client of mine and talking through their marketing formation, explaining how their channels, targeting, and content all fits together. And from that point on, things get really interesting as we get into the real meat of the zonal marketing model tactics. But I won't get ahead of myself. For now, I'll simply say thank you for joining me for this episode of Zonal Marketing. See you next time.